Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host Raghunath and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Friday, Srimad Bhagavatam, digging ourselves out of the snow. We took a day off just to plow the driveway yesterday. That's like, I was up at 4 plowing. That's what I did.
All right.
It was a thing. You got to wear goggles because you can't see. It's dark. Yeah. But it was fun. It was not so light, and the snow pushed.
Okay. Are you a homeschool teacher today too?
No. Nope. My kids have a pod. They go to a homeschool pod where they go somewhere.
Odd. I thought they go to your place on Fridays though.
We move it around, Kaustubha. You got to be on. You got to get on the schedule more.
All right.
Kids are moving. Things are happening. Schedules are changing. How are you?
Doing good. I got something to mention.
What you got?
So I mentioned last show that we were thinking of trying to get the Wisdom of the Sages community into this. It's called the Live to Give. It's a Live to Give Gita Jayanti campaign. Yeah. So Gita Jayanti is the day that the Bhagavad Gita was spoken. This year it falls on Christmas Day. And there's like a
Merry Christmas, Arjuna.
That's right. And there's like a global kind of effort to try to distribute for that day 2 million Bhagavad Gitas.
Wow.
Yeah. And Vaisheshika, Das, who we had on the show a few weeks back, he's kind of really the person that's spearheading the whole thing. And I said to him, I would really love to just kind of open it up for our people, but just make it really easy for them. So like, he said, look, I'm going to have some of my people give you a call and you just talk to them. And basically everything I asked for, they're so sweet and accommodating and nice. I said, basically, I just want like a phone number that people can call or text. And they just say, I want to send Bhagavad Gitas to these people and I need to, how do I do it? And then they'll just take care of everything for you. You just say, I assume they do it through PayPal or something like that. Mm. And you can just send in a payment and there's 3 options. This is the way it works. You ready?
Yeah.
That if you want to give a case of Bhagavad Gitas, like if you want to order a case that you can distribute yourself to like family members or friends or stocking stuffers or whatever. There's
stocking stuffer. I got a Gita in my stocking.
That's right. So there's 24 in a case and you can order a case. And or if you want to sponsor a case, in other words,
how much is a case?
A case is $120. But they're so accommodating. They said, but if that's too much, just let us know and we'll work something out. They're like that.
Wow.
So then if you want to sponsor a case, they'll distribute them to hospitals, to frontline workers. They're doing a lot to the firefighters because the people I was talking to were like in Northern California where all the firefighters just, we're working so hard to control all those fires. So they're giving to firefighters, hospitals, other frontline workers, prisons, motels, libraries. I'm definitely doing a case.
I'm committing to a case.
Where are you going to send your case?
I'll have them distribute it. What I mean?
Just them. It's up to them.
I'll have them do it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, that's a lot of work. For me, I don't see that many people. I live on a farm.
No. But I'm saying, you could say prisons, or you could say hospitals, you could say frontline. If you ask them, they'll do it wherever you want.
Oh, really?
And then the other thing is that say you got like a list of like 15 people that you want to send a Bhagavad Gita to. You just send them the addresses and they'll send them out to them. They'll like take care of the whole
Oh,
thing
really?
for you. Yeah.
That's easy.
Isn't that great?
That's easy. Okay, I
So
can do
like,
that too.
okay. So just think of like, 24 people that you want a Bhagavad Gita to give to, or even more, or whatever.
Their
Maybe
address.
less if it's
Yeah,
less.
this is one-stop Christmas shopping here.
That's the point. They made
This
it
is
so
it. My
easy.
list is done.
And we were talking about how
My big Italian family's all getting Gitas. Every year since I become into Bhakti, it's like, okay, a pack of incense from Uncle Ray. No kidding. Every year they're getting something, little
But
trinket.
we were talking about how, remember that you and I went out and it was cold and you were going to go out and try to sell some Bhagavad Gitas and you're just like, I can't do it.
Yeah,
It's so much easier nowadays, right?
it's so much
They're
easier.
going to do it all for you.
Do it.
So they'll send out as many as you want. And so it's a standard price is like about $5 for a Gita.
Yeah.
And any of those three options are okay. And again, that if it's like too expensive for you, they're just like, oh, just tell them we'll work it out. And also, and I said, but a lot of our listeners from Europe, they said, okay, well, just call us and we'll find them a place in Europe that'll do the same thing. So it's like, if you're in Europe, they'll do the same thing for you. And so this is how you do it. You can either text or call 650-336-7993. Again, that's 650-336-7993.
Operators are standing by.
Operators, they're like that. I said, but it's like, what if someone's not there to answer the phone? They said, well, there'll be 4 of us that'll have this number, so it'll come to all of our phones, so someone will answer. They were just like so nice and so accommodating. I was just like, wow, these people are the best. So hey, why don't we all? And then I said, is there any way that we could find out like how many came through Wisdom of the Sages? And then, oh yes, we can calculate that for you. So whatever I asked, they did. So let's see what we can do.
All right, I'm in for a case.
Yeah.
Also, I want to thank some people have been writing us already. How can they support the show with a one-time? There's a lot of people who support the show with Patreon, patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. We really appreciate it. But some people are writing us over the holiday season saying, hey, we'd like to give a one-time donation also. Or I'm not a Patreon member, but I'd like to give a one-time donation. And first of all, we really appreciate it, and it's definitely necessary to keep this going. If you want to do that, you can go through PayPal, and you go through an email in PayPal, and the email is bhakticollective@gmail.com, bhakticollective@gmail.com. So thanks if you've done it. We really, we're very, very grateful for it. And if you'd like to do it, please do it. Give whatever you like. It's more than welcome, and again, it's needed to keep the show going. We are definitely community supported, and we are grateful for all that you guys do for us. So we are at a nice place in the Bhagavatam. We're going through these Chatur Shloki, the 4 shlokas. Shlokas are the verses that sort of encapsulate, enshrine.
Like a nutshell, kind of like a
nutshell, perhaps, with a very sweet, juicy nut inside.
Oily, fatty
nut. Yeah. In the second canto, chapter 9. Let's start with our secret mantras. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead Narayan. Unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service to the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmadatam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Canto 2, Chapter 9, text
36.
36. All right.
You should really line this up before.
I did. It somehow switched back to the other view, and I can't figure out how to get from one view to the other.
Oh, do you in other words, like the screen, and there's two
There's the
different...
screen with just the verses, and then there's a screen with the purports.
You know, there's a way to get... I figured out how to get around that.
How do you get back to it?
Get everything back on one page? Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, how do you do that?
I'll tell you later.
Okay. All right. A person who is searching after the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, must certainly search for it up to this point.
Up to this point.
In all circumstances, in all space and time, and both directly and indirectly. Again, a person who is searching for the a person who is searching after the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, must certainly search for it up to this, in all circumstances, in all space and time, both directly and indirectly.
Okay. So search up to what point, right?
Yeah, search up to what?
Well, you know, that's what we've been... That's referring to the previous verses. So this, you know, we mentioned when we started these Chatushloki verses that they cover 3 different subjects.
Yeah.
Sambandha, which means, you know, understanding the nature of my relationship with God, my relationship with the material world. How you know, what is the nature of that connection? And the second point was abhideya, which means the process or the practice. And the last one is prayojana, which is the goal, which is prema bhakti, or pure love of God. And so, but the order that they went in was the first 2 dealt with sambandha, the nature of the relationship. The third dealt with prayojana, the goal. And this 4th one is the abhideya, is the practice. And so the previous verses, they described, the first verse is described that Lord Vishnu told Brahma, I exist before, during, and after creation. All those cycles that are going on, I'm beyond time and space, right? And then the second one dealt with, if anything within this world that you see as disconnected with me, that is illusion, right? And then in the last verse, he said that, you know, he talked about himself in terms of being both penetrating, permeating, sustaining, you know, within everything in the material world, but at the same time, he exists beyond that, you know, in his divine realm. All of this was kind of implicitly within that verse. And so he was saying that, you know, we can understand the greatness of God, how he maintains the universes and permeates, and, you know, as the Paramatma within every body, within every atom. You know, he is that great God that's supporting everything. At the same time, he's without it. He's beyond it. There's a personal manifestation, right? He's not only just spread out, but he's also there in a form that you can connect with in a personal way and even love. And so up to this point, we should search, you know, like don't stop hear the word jignasu is used, or jignasam. One's inquiry should go all the way until you get to sweet baby Krishna, that person, you know.
Without that concept of personhood,
yeah,
you can't have love. I mean, what am I going to love? A vapor? God is, you know, that's some concept of God. God is a vapor. God is a gaseous being. You know, just it's like a cloud. I can't love a cloud. I want a form to love. I mean, the first time someone told me, I had this teacher. It wasn't a bhakta, of course.
And this is in the West Village here again?
Yeah, I'm a secret story. I'm a guru.
Was it the one that told you? Oh, I won't even go into it.
Don't go.
Who instructed you to? Just can't even say it.
Yeah, but anyway, he was the one that he was the one that just told me, look, listen, I'm here to help you understand that you're God. And I was like, I don't know if I'm okay with that. If I'm God, I'm in a lot of pain right now. I'm in anxiety. I'm struggling in material existence. I can't control my senses. I don't want to be God. If this is God, if this is what God looks like, he's like, you just don't know you're God yet. I was like, if I'm God, I want a reciprocal loving relationship. So the whole concept of I am God, I wasn't okay with that, and I wanted God to have a form. I wanted an idea of divine personhood. So bhakti sort of really resonated with me. Matter of
Mhm.
fact, I find it hard to understand any spiritual path, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, and maybe God reveals themselves, but I find it hard in these Abrahamic religions where there is no clear form of divinity besides Christ, who's like the divine Son of God, seated at the right hand of the Father. But no, what is God though? Who am I loving? Where am I reposing my love? Just like if I said, "Oh yeah, I love my wife." What does she look like? I don't know. Well, what does she dress like? I don't know. What color is her hair? I don't know.
Where does she
How do
live?
you?
I don't know.
Where does she live? What does
What does
she
she
eat? What does she
do?
like? What's her hobbies? I don't know. I want to know. I want to know what God looks like. It's
Inquiring
easier to
minds want
fall
to
in
know.
love when you have personal attributes. That's why we do fall in love, matter of fact. That's why we hear Krishna Lila, because we fall in love with these stories and they hook the heart.
Mm. You know, with so you're speaking about the Abrahamic faiths.
Abrahamic or Abrahamic?
Abrahamic, something like that. And but even if we go to like the Eastern realm of faiths or spiritual practices,
That's where you
you know,
get to the cloud.
well, you
God,
get
it's
both there, right?
all pervading. It's
Yeah.
it almost seems like a fog coming in. You know what I mean? That's how I perceive that concept of Brahman.
You know, with going back to say some of the Christian traditions and so on, um, like I remember receiving these Christian tracts that would try to show a picture of God and what and what's
Christian
in,
tracks, those like the little booklets.
yeah, those little
I
booklets.
love those. I love those.
Okay. And so one of them, it kind of showed, it was almost like the Lincoln Memorial, where you have like this huge figure in like a huge chair. Didn't show the face. And then it showed like all humanity were like these little, kind of like all sitting in rows, like, like God is this great, huge figure. And we're
Right.
all like these little figures.
Sort of
Um,
how I pictured God. Big
n-
chair,
yeah.
no face.
No, yeah. So now, so that's like one way of the imagination trying to deal with the limited information that's provided. And within the Eastern realms of philosophy and religion, or Vedanta, let's say, you get these two different points of view, which is one is that God can be understood as a person, and one that God, it has no personal form, but God is an all-pervasive energy, and we are all that all-pervasive energy. And when we achieve our perfection, we merge back into that, or we understand that we have always been that, and all the illusion of duality and individuality disappears. Now, from my understanding, like if you look at the traditional texts that deal with that idea, which is called Advaita Vedanta, that that um that ultimately we're all God, and ultimately there is no individuality. Those texts don't talk about love, right? Love is not seen as the highest goal, but like knowledge or truth is seen as the highest goal, right? But it seems like this is my own interpretation, my own conclusion that I've come to just through studying all this, is that at a certain point in history, beginning about 1,000 years ago, and then about 500 years ago, even more so, there was like a big boost to it. There's a movement called the Bhakti movement, where the Bhakti teachings that are there in those same texts really became prominent, and many prominent figures, represented it. So if you go back 1,000 years, you have Ramanujacharya, and if you go back 800 years, you have Madhvacharya, and if you go back 500 years, there's a whole onslaught of Bhakti teachers.
And on a great side note, a lot of those great masters of those impersonal schools, they started crossing over to the personal schools. So many
At that
stories
time.
at that, yeah,
Yes, that's
just
right.
being inspired by the Bhakti movement. They were
That's right.
already very, very evolved, mystics in their own right. But when they got
Sarvabhauma.
yeah, when they got that hook in the heart of
Yeah,
sweet baby Krishna, they couldn't help.
that's right.
These are the
Yeah.
true gyanis, the four types of people that surrender to Krishna.
hmm And so my point is that, but I think that since that time, now if you go back, like say in the past century or so, that there's a lot of prominent figures that kind of blend the two, right? They kind of, which I think is personally, I feel is a little confusing and it's just lacking clarity. But in other words, because there's such a popularity to the beauty in the bhakti teachings, right? The Advaita teachings were kind of like this. They're kind of stark. They're all about renunciation, you know.
Sure.
Whereas in the bhakti teachings, it was saying that through love and through spiritual attachment, you can become entirely materially detached.
It's one of these things that people who are not in the know. I mean, this is what, truthfully, this whole Bhagavatam, wisdom of the sages thing we're doing, it's really preparing people to discern and move forward in their bhakti, on their bhakti path or on their spiritual path, because it's very confusing, especially like you were saying, as some of the facets of one school blend with the other.
hmm
And if there's teachers propounding something, you really got to go to them and say, what do you actually believe? Like, what's the final
You got to
conclusion?
push them sometimes to actually get them to
You
say
got to
it.
push them to get to the bottom of it. Because in one sense, they could even be telling Krishna Leela stories. Oh, the butter thief. Oh, I love that story. But if you push them further, where do you go with this? What's the actual goal? They might say, yes, actually, these are stories to get you to understand that you are God. And you got to be careful, because you can find yourself going down that whole other path, and you didn't
hmm
even intend to. It was almost baited with Krishna, but leads you to impersonalism. And it's not because they're necessarily nefarious. Krishna's pastimes, or these leelas that we tell, they're actually just great stories, and everybody loves them. Even the impersonalists love them. But the problem is oftentimes their teachers and their teachers' teachers were sort of confused. They had gurus, and there are gurus like this, that were like maybe living in a tiny little ashram, and they themselves didn't have a firm conclusion, or they themselves didn't have firm teachers, or they themselves didn't have a strong philosophical conviction. And that's why I feel like our butts are saved, because Prabhupada's school of the Bhagavatam that we opted into, they were very distinct. This is impersonalism. This is personalism. They walk a very similar path for a while, and then you're going to hit a fork. But you should understand from the get-go that you're not God. You're part of something bigger. You're part of something bigger, and your substance, your substantiality, your joy, your pleasure comes from your contributing you're contributing to the whole, not being the whole. You will never fully be satisfied being the whole, because that's not your real position. And very distinct. And there's lots of red flags set up when you start hearing someone say, and when we find our true, spiritual form, or we are there, there's a chance that we will merge to that light, or we hear anything about the light or the formless or the God has no name, all of a sudden, ding, 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 all the red flags should go up. And Prabhupada made it very clear, which is really not, for me, it was just shining light on a lot of confusion, because there's a lot of this impersonal teachings blended in these in the quote Hindu teachings. But not only that, but a lot of the cultures from the West that appreciated, and you might argue culturally appropriated, whatever it was, a lot of meditational practices, they were all taken, a lot of them were taken from India. But whether they were or not, a lot are blended with this impersonal realization that you are God, you are light, you are can become God, or only in time when you do your work, you'll remember that ultimately you're God.
Mm.
And we get it, we appreciate it. It sort of fits into our basket, but we take it one step further. You're God, and also you're not God. You're a tiny spark of the bigger flame.
Right. That was really kind of where the whole book, the journey home, was going. Right, is that as Radha Swami was traveling throughout India, he was up in the Himalayas with the Naga Babas and different types of yogis. He was, in Gaya with Buddhist teachers. He was in Calcutta with Mother Teresa. He was with Muktananda, on the West Coast. He was, he was going around, and he was, gaining valuable lessons wherever he went. But he had this one fundamental question: is that it seems like some of these teachers are saying that um, there is no God has no form. God is an all-pervasive energy, and we are all that energy, and we are all God.
Hmm.
And the goal is to realize that and become free of all suffering. And another group who are speaking from the same books, right? But we're seeing it in a different way. They seem to be saying, "No, God is a person, and that you can, and that the goal of it all is to actually love that person, and through loving that person, love every individual, and that we are individuals always. We always have been, and we always will be." And so he was struggling with this. Is God a person? Is God an energy? What is, what's the truth? And so the climax of that book is where Radha Swami approaches Srila Prabhupada in Vrindavan and asks that question. And um, and Prabhupada quotes from the Srimad Bhagavatam that Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavanati Shabdate, that this absolute truth manifests in three features. There is the non-personal, let's say non-personal, all-pervasive energy. That is one feature of God, but it's only one feature of God. And so when people tell you that God is an all-pervasive energy, that is truth. But God is still more. God is also situated within the heart of every living being as Paramatma. And ultimately, there's a person that's behind it all. And that the very goal, and so this verse is saying, once you search up to that level, right? How to say up to that point? A person who is searching for the supreme absolute truth, the personality of God, it must certainly search for it up to this in all circumstances, in all space and time, and both directly and indirectly. It's saying that every living being, no matter where you are, all space, no matter when, at all time, we all have that connection, and we should all search for it all the way. Know that all pervasive feature of God that's everywhere. Know that localized feature of God that's within the heart of every living being, and ultimately know that sweet baby Krishna, right? Who's like that cowherd boy, who it is somehow, mysteriously, and inconceivably all extending from his divine, beautiful form.
Nice.
All right. So this verse uses it uses this word. It says the first line is, or the second, well, the first and second line I read it. Etavad eva jignasam, right? Tattva jignasunat manaha. This word jignasa, it may be familiar to a lot of listeners, because it's a one should inquire into the absolute, right? Or now is the time to inquire into the absolute. It's found there in the first verse of the Vedanta Sutra, Atato Brahma Jignasa. Now is the time to inquire into Brahman, into spiritual, into spirituality. Or the first sutra of the Yoga Sutras, Atato Yoga Anushasana. Now is the time to inquire. But this word Jignasa is used a lot like that. And here it's saying that it's saying that we have an opportunity, Atato Brahma Jignasa. Now is the time to inquire into the absolute. It's like, now that you're a human being, now that you've been given special facility, right? Use it. Don't waste it. Don't let it slip through your fingers. And again, we should mention that this Sunday we'll be having special guest.
Special guest Chaitanya Charan. People have been asking. This guy is great.
Yeah, he's
One of
great.
these really sharp, learned brahmacharis.
But
Really,
friendly.
I was playing a lecture in the kitchen the other day.
Mm-hmm.
My wife just stopped and just says, "I can listen to this guy speak forever." He's got such a it's like a funny Indian accent, but it's
Yeah,
so
strong.
charming and engaging, and you just want to listen to him.
Yeah.
And he's just a wonderful guy. So don't miss Sunday's class, Sunday's interview at 8 a.m. Eastern time.
Okay. So he was describing, speaking of this verse, it's what is special about humans. What is different between humans and other forms of life.
Mm.
There's the cat and the dog and the tree and the octopus, for that
You,
matter.
it's hard to even understand that this human body is rare. We think, yeah, yeah, we're human, duh. Of course we're human, duh. But the fact is, there's 8,400,000 species of life. I mean, I was just like, chopping wood the other day, and there's a bunch of worms in the wood. That's a
Worms.
life. Then there's an earthworm, and then there's a cardinal, and then there's a red-headed woodpecker, then there's a blade of grass, and then there's an oak tree, and then there's a cat, and then there's a cougar. These are all species of life, and the jiva, they say that the jiva has been through every one of these species of life. Now, the problem is every species of life has a ceiling of what they can do beyond their destiny, beyond their karma. They're limited within that vehicle. Now, sometimes you hear some fantastic stories, like a dolphin saved a life, or I read the story like a sea tortoise saved a person's life. And there's definitely dogs. If you have dogs, dogs can be compassionate. Dogs can walk miles to find their masters, and cats also. And so I don't
I don't
want to
think
take
cats
any.
do that.
Cats do stuff. Cats do stuff.
They do other
Cats
stuff. I don't
travel
think they walk
miles.
miles to find their masters, do they?
Yeah,
Do
yes,
they?
they do, man.
Really?
Cats
Oh,
cats walk miles to find their home and
to
to
find their
find.
home.
Yeah,
Okay, maybe you're right. All right.
there's
I
like
stand corrected.
it's well, you know why? Because the Vedas are very dismissive. I found that they're just saying they're just
Cats.
animals. They're just animals, and they act just on it. Not all animals directly act just for like base instincts, but for the most part, they're trapped in that vehicle, and there's a ceiling of where they can go. Whereas a human has this vehicle that can really excel. It has incredible potential to start to ask these bigger questions like, what am I outside of this cat body, dog body, dolphin body? What am I? And what am I supposed to be doing here?
Hmm.
Is life has a purpose? And also, here's another interesting thing about animals: they don't degrade themselves, they don't defile their consciousness. They do what they're programmed to do. We
Mhm.
have an opportunity to upgrade our consciousness, upgrade our conversation, upgrade our thoughts, upgrade our food, upgrade our activities, our diet, upgrade our company we keep, upgrade the media we consume. We have that opportunity, or we have the opportunity to defile the mind, defile our friendship, defile our everything that we have in our life.
Hmm.
So we are in this sort of like fork in the road, not just in this lifetime, practically every moment, practically every choice we make, practically every dealing I make with another human, practically every conversation, practically every piece of food I put in my mouth. It's all a fork in the road to upgrade or degrade. The animals are just, it's not like the, dolphins are going to say, you know what, I've been overeating algae. I want to back off a little. I've got to like control my senses. I've been going crazy on that wakimi seaweed, whatever the dolphins eat. Or I'm going to fast. I think it's unethical to eat, minnows. I'm going to stop eating these minnows. Humans have a chance to sort of like really dial in their diet, right? Really dial in their thoughts. Again, not taking anything away from mystical dolphins or things like that, but humans have this ability to transcend, and because of that, there's a responsibility, and there's some issue that could happen because we could go back into lower species of life. This is the theory behind the Vedas. We don't always go up. The animals are dying and they're going up. Next birth, they get a higher birth. Next birth, they get a higher birth. And they act, for the most part, on a deep-rooted instinct. If I punch a tiger in the nose, he's going to bite my hand. You know why? That's what tigers do. If I punch a human in the nose, they could, from their lower gut instinct, want to punch me right back. We've had that instinct, where someone attacks us and we just like, come on. Or there's that instinct where like, hey man, what is the matter with you? Are you okay? How can I help? We can react from a higher place or a lower place at any moment, at any reaction. And we're in a training right now. This whole Bhagavatam on a regular basis, we're in a training to act from a higher place. We may fall short, but that's what we're in training to do. We're trying to act away from my animal instincts. And you know what? They're deeply woven in me. I'm realizing I naturally go. I have a rage default button. I have an anger default button. I have, you want to fight? Let's go. Let's bring it on. Let's go. Let's do it. That's sort of one of my defaults, and it's almost sad. But this is my work in this lifetime. I have to like rewire myself. So I come from a place of a heart, of a consciousness, of understanding and empathy. Anyway, this is the plight of the jiva traveling through these lifetimes. So when Kaustubha says things like, we're forgetting this rare opportunity. It is a rare opportunity. This is a rare chance. And what are we doing with our bodies, Kaustubha? What are we doing with our bodies in this lifetime?
Usually
we finally made it to human.
Trying to find some way to satisfy the senses of the body.
Yeah, we're going to go to football games, going to season tickets to the Mets. What are we doing? What are we doing?
Well, it was the way that Chaitanya Charan, he made it, this is the way he laid it out. He said, if you analyze how we're different than animals, he said, we can look on 3 different levels: physical, mental, and spiritual, right? Now, according to our yogic text, on a spiritual level, we're exactly the same, right? There's no difference. We're both, we're all composed of spiritual energy. On a physical level, there's differences. But even still, we're all made up of the same ingredients: earth, water, fire, air, ether, etc.
Yeah.
But he said the primary difference lies in the mind, right? That the human mind has a capacity, like let's say a greater information processing capacity, right? The information that comes through the senses, the human mind has a greater capacity to process, understand, inquire about that information. Whereas, as you were mentioning, the animal is the conditioning that's impressed within the mind of the animal is more influential. So you're saying like, a dog is going to act like a dog and a cat is going to act like a cat, and what to speak of a tree, has little ability to question, why am I here and what can I do to change this? They're just going to play out,
Sure.
according
We
to the
find
impressions
that
that are.
trees are more than what they appear to be. That's what the science is revealing. But at the same time, there is a ceiling. A tree is going to give nuts or fruits or flowers. It's still got that limited capacity.
Yeah. So when you get to that human level, you've finally, after we don't know how long, been given that greater information processing capacity to really question, what is this all about? But and the way he said is like, one computer has like, however, I don't even know what RAM, like what's good and bad. And was it like 16 is like kind of a fast like laptop or something like that? Something like that. In any case, say you had like 4, now you jumped up to 16, there's a lot more you can do with that computer now. But if all you do is not, if you don't use that computer for anything, if you just waste all your time on the computer, if you just play computer games on the computer rather than using it to its full capacity, doing higher level things with it. And so therefore, this is our point. We have a higher capacity, but we should be careful to make sure that it doesn't become directed in lower directions, right?
Yeah.
We have that higher capacity to question life and understand things more deeply, but we often waste it, just engaging it in basically the animal propensities of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending.
By the way, those 4 are big: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending.
Mm.
These are the four animal propensities spoken about in the Bhagavatam, but very relatable. But if that's all we're doing, and you might say, well, a squirrel eats and I eat, but I eat in a different way. I eat much more refined food. Mara's cooking is very refined, and various herbs
Very
and
refined.
yeah. But the idea is it's still eating. If your goal is like today I'm gonna eat, if I'm a foodie, I love that one. That's a new one in our lifetime. A foodie. I'm a foodie. But if that's what your thing is, it's no different than a squirrel eating a nut, and then eating, and then they're sleeping. And every animal, like my dog, he'll just curl up anywhere. Just gets a little comfortable, gets a little soft, finds a soft little place. Where are we? We're just like the sophisticated beast because we buy one of those
Sealy
one of those
Posturpedic.
Sealy Posturpedic memory foam. Memory foam. Come on. It's like that's like a dog. Are we any better than a dog? And we buy these expensive pillows, or sometimes you ever go into those houses and there's like 1,000 pillows on the bed. It's like I'll never get that. Check it out. Check out my pillow collection. But it's just sleeping. It's still just sleeping, like the dog sleeps. Defending. We do martial arts, mixed martial arts, Jeet Kune Do, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I carry guns. I mean, it's still defending. Or we have a great, a big portion of our taxes go to military defense. It's all just defending, like the animals are defending. If you just stop and study animals, these four things are going on a regular basis: eating, sleeping, and of course mating. Mating for the chickens, we know that's gross. Ever watch chickens mate?
I have not.
You should. You know why?
Should I?
It really just it takes all the romance right out of it.
Okay.
It's just like it's a patriarchal society. The roosters just come, they take. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. We've got rid of all our roosters. We've got rid of all those. I can't tolerate them. It's horrible.
Okay.
Pick the feathers off the back of the neck of the hens and grip them with their claws and then mate them and it's horrible.
Really?
But anyway, the thing is, that's what they do. They want sex, they're going to take it right now.
Hmm.
And you have that in culture, or we refine it and we have a mating rituals. And sometimes the mating rituals are getting pretty gross too. It used to be like, oh, I love you and I brought you some flowers. And now it's sort of like, I text you an emoji and now we're going to have sex. That's it. A few text messages back and forth, and that's the romantic. And here's the deal. It's still just mating. It's still like a rooster. And what are we supposed to do in this lifetime? Just pop out a couple chicks? Is that the goal of life? Pop out a couple of chicks, find a nice place to sleep, find a good restaurant, find a good place to sleep. I had a great sleep last night. And that's what vacation is, where I can eat different foods and sleep in different beds and mate with different people. Is that what vacation is? And if we're doing nothing but eating, sleeping, mating, defending on a regular basis, we're no better than the animals.
Okay. Well, now let's say that Raghunath, I buy into what you're saying. I think that if all, even if it's polished, even if it's refined, if all I'm focused on is either eating, sleeping, mating, or defending, then I have not properly used my capacity, my human capacity.
Well,
Yeah.
let me just butt this one in. All four of those things are meditations. Like the foodie meditates on food. The person who's looking for a partner to hook up with, that's their meditation. So it means it's consuming their mind as their focus, and it becomes them, basically. They become that. That becomes their being. So go on.
So let's assume that someone develops the determination. Okay, what you're saying, I understand. It makes a lot of sense to me. I want to inquire into deeper things. Let me go into science. Let me study the world that I live in more deeply and understand how it all works, right? But what's happening here in the Bhagavatam is saying, even that, you still take that and take it all the way, because for instance, there's science, and science is going to try to understand, like, how does the world work?
Right.
Then there's philosophy, and philosophy is going to say, well, why does the world work the way it does? That's kind of a deeper level of inquiry, right? Like, someone may study, how does the rain fall? There's evaporation, and it's that water is stored as a vapor, and then under the right conditions, gravity pulls it back down to the earth, et cetera, et cetera. One could go into that study and say, you see, I'm using my human capacity, but what the Bhagavatam is saying, that human capacity has still not been fulfilled until you go still further and try to understand why. Why is the rain falling? Why am I in a human body? Why do I exist, and what is my very purpose or my dharma to fulfill? Until one goes there, then they really haven't fulfilled that capacity still. So science aims to answer the how, and philosophy is aiming to understand the why. And Bhagavatam is saying, take philosophy to its final point, and ultimately is revealed in divine love. Right?
It's like that guy you told the story about the other day who you met some sadhu in Mayapur early in the morning, and he invited you into his little hut, and he had this, he wasn't sure what it was. He's like, this heater, I have this American heater, but it doesn't work. And it was a waffle iron.
Yeah.
So here he has this thing, which he doesn't know what it is. He knows you can plug it in. He knows
might even study it, and
he could study it. He might get things
yeah.
hot, and it gives his hands maybe a little warmer if he puts his hands near it. But he's never had the great nectar, the great gift of the waffle.
With that
That
maple
has
syrup
not come to him yet. So when you or I give you a pair of ice skates, and you're like, oh, interesting shoes. It'd be fun to walk around with these shoes. But if you actually see a Dorothy Hamill, am I dating myself? Dorothy Hamill. Mara's like, there's other ice
haircut,
skater.
right? She's famous today. What's it?
So if you see a person who can really ice skate, you're like, oh, that's what those shoes are for. This human body is like these ice skates. It's like this waffle iron. We just never like extracted the incredible potential from it. And it goes to what we're doing with our senses. What am I consuming in my senses? What am I putting in my mouth, my ears, my eyes? Am I controlling the senses, or am I indulging the senses? All I have to do is go, that whistle like that. My dog can be sound asleep, and he will just come over to get some food. He will eat any time of the day, all day long. He will sleep all day long. He will, what I mean? He'll find some warm spot. He will mate all day long if he could. He will, what I mean? It's just one of these things. When we learn to withhold the senses, pull back the senses, when we're not looking to get the pleasure out there, but from in here, that's when we've crossed a threshold into another state of being. And this is what all the Vedic teachings are goading us towards.
And Bhagavatam is doing it here in the last verse of the nutshell verses, right? Take it all the way, and understand, and through that you'll be able to understand your completeness. Now here's a little something from the commentary, and Prabhupada's going to push this and push it. He says, because the so-called great leaders of human society are ignorant of this great knowledge of Bhakti Yoga, and are always engaged in ignoble acts of sense gratification, bewildered by the external energy of the Lord, they are stubborn rebels against the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they never agree to surrender to Him. Prophet's having this.
Wouldn't it be great if whomever the president or leaders of society were just like, oh my God, I got this Bhagavad Gita today. It changed everything. Okay, guys, we're going to make some new rules. Wouldn't that be great? Like, why? Do you ever wonder, like, why doesn't everybody just like fully get this?
Yeah. So he continues. He says that they may be
Read
highly
that again, please. That was actually
actually, it just got heavier and heavier. I didn't even read the whole thing. He really comes down on, but I'll read it. He says, because the so-called great leaders of human society are ignorant, and I think when he uses that word ignorant, they just don't know of this great knowledge of Bhakti Yoga, and are always engaged in ignoble acts of sense gratification. It's not that it's bad.
always engaged in ignoble acts of sense gratification. Boom.
bewildered by the external energy of the Lord, right? They become confused by how they've disconnected the energy from its source. And so they've become confused. They are stubborn rebels against the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they never agree to surrender unto him because they were fools, miscreants, and the lowest types of human beings. And those are all related to a Bhagavad Gita verse that he's alluding to. Now he goes on. Such faithless non-believers may be highly educated in the material sense of the term, but factually, they're the greatest fools of the world, because by the influence of the external material nature, all their so-called acquisitions of knowledge have been made null and void. In other words, I have this waffle iron, but I don't know what a waffle is. I have all this knowledge, I have all this material advancement, but I don't know its purpose. So he says, therefore, all advancement of knowledge in the present context of things is being misused by cats and dogs fighting with one another for sense gratification. And all the acquisition of knowledge in science, philosophy, fine arts, nationalism, economic development, religion, and great activities are being spoiled by being used as dresses for dead men.
That was good. That was good. That was head blowing, mind blowing.
Yeah.
Woo!
So
That last line used as
dresses for dead men. He says there is no utility in the dresses used for covering a coffin of a dead body, save getting false applause from the ignorant public. And so he says, therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam, the Srimad Bhagavatam therefore says again and again that without attainment of the status of Bhakti Yoga, all the activities of human society are to be considered absolute failures only. And then he quotes from 5th canto, 5th chapter, 5th verse,
555.
which says that as 555, as long as one is blind to inquiring about self-realization, all material activities, however great they may be, are all different kinds of defeat, because the aim of human life is not fulfilled by such unwanted and profitless activities. The function of the human body is to attain freedom from material bondage. But as long as, because we got that greater knowledge, capacity, but as long as one is fully absorbed in material activities, his mind will be overwhelmed in the whirlpool of matter, and thus he will continue to be encaged in material bodies life after life.
Mara, ever feel like you're in a whirlpool of matter?
Yes.
Like a toilet, just like whoosh, whirlpool of matter.
Yeah. So, it's actually a very long commentary, but what it goes on to show again and again and again is that every single soul, has this divine connection. And when we reach the human form, we have the capacity to reestablish that connection, and that it does not matter where you are, what family you're born in, what your sex or gender is, whether you have wealth,
your gender preference
doesn't matter, whether you have wealth or not, there is no, and therefore it's saying, like this verse said, that under all circumstances, one should search for that absolute truth, right? A person who is searching after the supreme absolute truth, the personality of God, must certainly search for it up to this in all circumstances, no matter what the circumstance may be, in all space, no matter where I'm from or where I happen to be, wherever I am in the universe, and actually, your question about how do people, because I mentioned that the other day, where it was saying that the cosmology spoken about in the Bhagavatam is to show that Dharma and connection to our divine source is being practiced in all places in the universe. And you asked about the hellish planets, and that is actually answered in this purport. Different examples are given. So wherever you are in space, whatever your circumstance may be, whatever the time may be, it's not like this is relevant at some point in time and not relevant at another point in time. Whoever you are, whatever your circumstances are, that human form gives us the possibility to inquire into that connection. And if we can understand that, if we can read the Bhagavatam and kind of get it, that, it's even whatever I may accomplish, it's kind of like that example of putting the ladder up against the wrong wall. I may climb very high, But if that ladder isn't going to that final destination, I'm never going to reach it. And Bhagavatam is trying to point us into that in that direction. That there's a root that as a leaf you're connected to. There's a divine source that you have an eternal connection with, and you've lost touch with that. But when you reconnect with that, it's going to manifest in the most beautiful and fascinating, manifestations of divine loving adventure. And it's sitting there waiting for you. Put your ladder up against that wall and start climbing. You got the human body, get climbing. Don't waste the opportunity.
That's lovely. And it's why we have to sort of get, not only on a regular basis, but get time together with a big group of people practicing bhakti where we can churn this stuff out, because we know that these retreats, these pilgrimages, sometimes the trainings that we do, we start to recalibrate what's important and what's not so important in our life. We start to rethink, what am I doing? What do I want to become? Where do I want to go? It's almost like I'm speeding down a highway, but I've never checked the map. Did I speed right past my exit? This is sort of what's going on in material life. It's pushing us, keeping us busy, and we don't even know why we're busy. We don't even know if we should have got off that exit. So a big part of our spiritual path is pulling over the car, checking the map. Should I be going straight ahead? Am I going straight ahead, but am I going too very fast in the wrong direction? And it makes us reprioritize our life, and sometimes radically even change our life. You know what? I don't want to be this person that I've been working towards becoming. I don't want to be that. Because sometimes we change from the time we enter university to the time we graduate. We've become different people. So we are here as a spiritual community and as to assist people in refining those choices. Or you will come to those on your own, what you want to become. And I think it's safe to say for me and Kaustubha, we walked into this, with one set of ideas of who we are, and then all of a sudden we're just like, I don't want to be that. I don't want to go down the road that's been paved for me. I'm not interested. And that affects us on a deeply level. And on a regular basis, we check in. We check in with the Bhagavatam. We check in with each other. We go on pilgrimages. We inquire from Guru. And it keeps us it keeps us keeping the main thing. Because that's the main thing. The main thing is to keep the main thing. And that's why we're here every morning.
And Raghu, with that, we're 3 minutes over time.
Ooh, sorry about that. I shouldn't have let that last thing go. But, hey, I'm teaching yoga today at supersoulyoga.com right after class. You can join me at 6:30. Just an hour, 15 minutes of Gita, and then bam, strong vinyas. Thanks for everybody for joining us. Again, if you want to leave those one-time donation, we're grateful for it. BhaktiCollective@gmail.com is our PayPal account, BhaktiCollective@gmail.com. And also, if you want to sponsor a case of Gitas, you can do that. $120. You got that phone number again, Kaustubha?
Yes, it is
650-336-7993.
Cool. Got some questions for Question Day? Tomorrow's the day. Email Mara 108, wisdom of the sages 108@gmail.com. And don't miss Chaitanya Charan this Sunday. You won't regret it.
You won't regret it.
Oh my God, Lori Pag's mystical cat is watching us. Cats are mystical. Come on.